Joseph Rojas was a drug addict who stole money from his family to get high. He was in and out of prison, and he nearly died of an overdose. Joseph wasn't exactly the ideal role model, but his story is changing the lives of thousands of teens, and you're about to see why.
Joseph Rojas grew up in the housing projects of Victoria, Texas, where gunfire and sirens echoed through the neighborhood. But for Joseph, the rough streets became a refuge from the nightmare of his home life.
I remember being 3.5 years old and about 10 feet away from my father as he beat my mother bloody. And that was the memories I grew up with.
When Joseph was still a small child, his father left the family.
First of all, it made me feel like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? My dad hasn't called me. And I wondered what was so bad about me that, I couldn't even keep a dad around.
Joseph's mother worked long hours to provide for her 2 boys. Many times they were left alone to fend for themselves.
I just was hurt so bad and felt so, so empty and so alone and like I was never going to be accepted that, I was looking for something to just take the pain away. And I found it by hanging out with a group of kids that got high. And so I went straight to cocaine, at the age of about 14 years old. Before I knew it, a line became 2 lines, 2 lines became 3 lines, and by the end of it all, the age of 21 years old, I had a $400 a day cocaine addiction. People always ask me, Joseph, how did you use $400 a day worth of cocaine if you didn't have a job and I sold drugs. I mean, I would sell drugs to, or rob and steal, whatever I had to do, but, I stole from my own mother to get high. A mother that did nothing but love me. A mother that would have given her life for mine. I was about 18 years old and my mother gave her life to Christ. She was looking for help so desperately for me that my mother ended up meeting a lady that took her to church. And I remember her coming home telling me that Jesus could change my life, that he can make me brand new. I didn't really believe in God. What kind of God lets you grow up without a father? What kind of God allows you to hate yourself the way you hate yourself? I'd say, Mom, I'm just a drug addict. And even if there is this God in heaven, what would he want with a worthless drug addict like me? I'm a convicted felon. I've been in and out of jails and institutions since I was a kid. What would God want with me? My mother took her life savings to send me to a rehab in California. And 30 days later, I was high, and my mom's life savings was gone. And these are things that were almost unbearable. And so I decided to take my life. I was tired of hurting my mother. I was tired of breaking my mother's heart. I decided to take a lethal dose of cocaine to stop my heart. And I didn't want my mom to be the one to find me, and I had just made the decision I was done living. My mother walked in unexpectedly, and I overdosed on cocaine in front of my mother on her living room floor. And I remember my mom calling the paramedics and screaming out to God, and the paramedics came and they had me hooked up to all these wires and this machine, and they put me in the back of the ambulance, and it was in the back of the ambulance that I felt the power of God. It was in the back of the ambulance that I felt the very hand of God. I couldn't speak, but with my heart and my mind, I said, Jesus, if you'll still have me, if you would still have me as broken and empty as I am, just a worthless drug addict, then I will give my life to you tonight. And that was the first time in my life that I ever knew the love of a father. That was the first time in my life that I ever felt like I got picked. It was the first time in my life that I ever felt like a complete person.
After becoming a Christian, it took Joseph nearly 2 years to break free from drug addiction.
For some people, it's day by day, one day at a time. But for me, it was hour by hour. And so I pick myself back up and I say, I'm going to go another hour. And then I go. And before I knew it, I got 2 days. And then I got a week. And before I knew it, I have a month. And then I have 2 months. And then you have a year. And then you have 2 years. And then the list goes on. And before you know it, it's 11 years later. And you have a beautiful wife and 3 kids and a beautiful home and 3 dogs. And life is awesome, and I see God every step of the way.